good morning, my little sunshiners. It's so wonderful to be able to bring you some information this morning from afar. So while you guys are sitting there comfortably in the chairs that rise and shine, I am hitting the airport and I'm on my way to Milwaukee. So I'm glad that I can spend some time with you virtually today. So today we're going to talk about nutrition, and so I'm really excited to bring this to you because it's one of my favorite topics to talk about. Those of you guys that have been in my Align classes before know that I could talk about food all day and for hours. So I've been looking over a little, some of your all's food logs, and it's great to be able to get an understanding of what you're getting out of the foods that you eat. So by using that Fat Secret app, or if you're using MyFitnessPal or anything else like that, you're getting more of an awareness of what your calories are and what your macronutrient breakdowns look like, as well as also a little bit more awareness of some of those deeper dives into those macronutrients, which I'm going to talk about now. So let's look at the handouts that I gave you. You have, I think it's a 4-page handout that Joe should have passed out to you guys today. And the first page talks about carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are one of the macronutrients. I think we're all kind of aware and fearful of carbohydrates. So they're really important though. When we eat carbs, that's the quickest source of fuel for our body. It's really the chief source of fuel for our body. When they go into our bloodstream, they're broken down easier, or when they go into our digestive tract, they're broken down easier and they go quickly into our bloodstream. We actually need to have around 112, somewhere around that, grams of carbohydrates a day just to feed our brain. So our brain is actually going to steal the first sources of carbohydrates because it actually needs a lot of energy to maintain itself. Yeah, the brain actually needs energy first. Kind of like the heart needs blood, brain needs energy. So if you don't get that, at least that minimum amount of carbohydrates, your brain's going to get foggy, you're going to start to forget things, you'll start to do crazy things like put the milk into the pantry instead of the refrigerator, things like that. I've done that before. And I think that carbohydrates have gotten a bad reputation because we've attributed those to a lot of weight gain, which is partially true. So let's look at carbohydrates and how they're broken down. So there's 3 different kinds of carbs, okay? So just it's the molecular structure of them. So the most simple form is our sugars. So they break down the quickest, they go quickest into the bloodstream, and they are ready to be used. And if we don't use them, guess what? We store them. So they're going to go back to the liver and be packaged up in a triglyceride. So a triglyceride is 3 fatty acids and a glycerol molecule. So it's, see the tri in there? 3 fatty acids and a glyceride, and that's your triglycerides. So that's why people who have high triglycerides, it's not a fat like you would think of cholesterol. Triglycerides is actually an indication of too much sugar in your diet and kind of a diabetes predictor as well. And then our livers start to get a little bit backed up because they're storing that sugar for us as well. So our liver's going to hold on to sugar and release it like in impulses when it knows that it needs it. And I've actually seen kids when I was working at Children's Mercy with what we call fatty liver disease. It's terrible, but their liver starts to kind of break down. It looks like cirrhosis of the liver because they've just had too much sugar and the liver keeps trying to store it, that the cells are just breaking down. So you can see right away that there's some drawbacks to getting too much sugar in your diet. And we're going to have another presentation where I talk a little bit more in depth about sugar and how that works as far as our blood sugar levels and diabetes and how that affects our bloodstream as well. So I won't spend too much time on that today. So anyway, first form of carbohydrate is sugar. So if we think about looking at a food label, we want to look at and a great example would be orange juice. So I'm looking at this food label and it says total carbohydrate 22 grams, and when I look at the grams of sugar, all 22 are sugar, okay? So we know that this is going to have a really high effect on our blood sugar. So if I'm looking at something like milk, so I've got my organic milk here, and milk actually is a carbohydrate as well. It contains a sugar called lactose. But we know in milk there's some other things. So if I look at my total carbohydrates, it's 12 grams. There's 12 grams of sugar as well, but we've got some protein and some fat in here. Whereas in our orange juice, it has no fat. Well, let's see. I need my readers, you guys. 1 gram of fat and 2 grams of protein. So we know this is going to have a lot more effect on our blood sugar, skyrocketing it, than our milk. So no, Kim, milk's not all bad, but you know, I know you're giving it up right now anyway, so it's good. We've had this debate. Okay, so other things that include the carbohydrate group, besides those simple sugars, which I don't have a whole lot of other explanations of simple sugars just because I don't have them in my house. I had some lemon drops, but I put them away, probably for safekeeping. So other examples of carbohydrates are the more complex carbohydrates, and good examples of those would be things like rice, oatmeal, so whole grain oats. Notice I have the old-fashioned oats. Those quick oats actually cook really fast, and so those have a higher effect on the blood sugar. I've told my groups before, but a dietitian taught me one time that the quicker something breaks down, the more effect it's going to have on your blood sugar. So like those quick oats, they cook really fast. They're going to skyrocket the blood sugar a lot quicker than the rolled oats or even the steel cut oats, which I think I have in my turntable, but it's okay, I won't get them out for you right now. If you've ever cooked anything like quinoa, you'll know that it takes a good half an hour to cook that. So these are more complex, and they also have a lot more fiber in them. And another great source of carbs is going to be like corn. So we eat a lot of corn tortillas or organic blue corn chips. I told Jeff the other day that I would wonder what my body would do if I was able to give up corn tortillas or corn chips for like a whole week. It would probably go into withdrawal. Some of you know that I'm not a big gluten fan, and that's just because I personally have an irritation with my stomach when I eat gluten. So I'm not preaching any kind of habits around that. I do want to talk to you guys a little bit about GMOs, and a lot of our wheat is a genetically modified food. So I tend to, when I want bread, there's Ezekiel bread, things like that, or sourdough. So this is a fresh farm to market sourdough bread. And you will notice that when you buy something like this, it's going to mold within about 2 days. And Joe can show you some bread loaves that I'll get out for her that I've had for over 2 years now, and they still have no mold on them. And on the food label it says healthy whole wheat bread. So the problem with those are that they have so many preservatives in them that they are really not healthy, and they don't break down. So if they don't break down in the bag, they're not breaking down in your bloodstream. And you know, one thing to keep in mind is that we really do want our foods to mold and to rot, because that means other organisms want to eat them, that they're nutritious, and they're going to try to steal that nutrients away from us and eat them. So one of my little sayings is, if lower life forms don't want to eat it, neither should we. So you buy bread that will mold, okay? Big rule, buy bread that will mold. All right, and so the last form of carbohydrate is going to be your fiber. And do you all know what a really great source of fiber is, besides oatmeal, things like that? Artichokes are actually one of the #1 high fiber foods. So things like your lettuce, your vegetables, apples, of course, good fiber. This peeling on the apple has pectin in it, and it's an insoluble fiber, so it goes straight through our so it goes straight through our digestive tract. Sorry, not our bloodstream. You are going to get sugar in your bloodstream, but apples are actually really good. I used to tell people 2 things that you could eat every day to really keep your GI tract in great health. One is an apple, and one is a good Greek yogurt. So the probiotics in Greek yogurt and an apple, it's good for your digestive tract. And also, if you eat that before before or after you eat something that's got a little bit of fat in it, it's going to help push that fat through a little bit faster. So that's good too. The other thing I have here is sauerkraut. So this is another vegetable. All of our vegetables, all of our fruits, all of our dairy products, all of our grain products, and beans are all going to fall into the carbohydrate family. So this is sauerkraut. It's a cabbage. And I'm going to give you our food goals list very soon. And we have 15 food goals in there. And amongst them is to eat foods that are high in probiotic, so fermented foods. I'll give you all a taste of kombucha the day that we talk about that. But this sauerkraut is a fermented food, and it's also really good for that gut tract, so the digestion in the gut. We got to keep feeding good, healthy bacteria to live in our gut because it lines our intestines and helps everything pass through. So try yourself some sauerkraut today. You notice that this jar is not yet open, but it'll get there. It's good. Another thing is pickles. Hold on, I'm going to show you my pickles. I'm coming back. Okay, so these are called Bubby's pickles, and you can see that the water in here is really cloudy. And a good friend of mine actually gave me my first jar of these, and I threw them away because I thought that they were bad because of the moldy looking water. But it's actually what they call the mother, and that's a fermentation inside there, and it's a good healthy bacteria. You're also going to find that in like your apple cider vinegar. So those kind of fermented foods are going to help with the gut digestion. And delicious actually. So I really regret throwing away my first like $7 bottle of pickles. Sorry, Margarita, love you. Okay, so now that kind of sums up a little bit about the carbohydrates. The last thing that I wanted to tell you is on your food tracker sheet, I said let's shoot for a target of about 40% of your diet to be in carbohydrates. So hang with me, do the math, write this down because it's probably not going to make sense just going into your head right now. So just write it down and then we'll talk about it. So I'm figuring we're all kind of setting around a 1,500 calorie diet, okay? So keep that in mind, around 1,500. And of course we could go 17, probably don't want anybody to go 13. So we don't want to go the other direction. We want to go maybe up to 17, okay? And this is for weight loss. So if we're at a 1,500 calorie diet and we're making 40% of that be carbohydrates, then you calculate the math, 40 times 1,500 or 1,500 times 0.40, and that's going to give us 600 of our calories are going to come from carbohydrates. So 600 of our calories are coming from carbohydrates. But there's 4 grams per calorie, or 4 calories per gram. Said that wrong. 4 calories per gram in any carbohydrate. So we got to take that 600, divide it by 4 calories per gram, and that equals 150 grams. So we're shooting for 150 grams of carbs per day. Now I like to break that out into 5 meals. So I think about having 2 snacks and 3 meals, or just giving myself a little ballpark. So if I take that 150 and divide it by 5, then that averages about 30 grams of carbs towards each feeding session that I have per day. So it really kind of brings an awareness. So let's look back at this bread. And when I look at this, isn't this sad that I have to kind of look at it like this? This is 19 grams of carb per 1 slice. So if I'm having 2 slices of bread, then I know I'm really hitting over that 30 mark, but that's okay. That could be, you know, a meal and a snack right there. Okay? So that just gives you a little indication of where you're trying to hit. We'll come back to this. I don't even know if you guys can see it, but here. All right, now I'll move on. Okay, so our next macro that we're going to talk about is protein. So protein is really important because it builds and repairs our muscle tissue. Any kind of tissue. So our skin, we talk about when we have kids who have burn injuries, they're going to need a lot of protein to help rebuild. So anybody who has had surgery and has a scar that needs repairing, muscle that's been cut, we're going to need a little bit more protein to help build and repair that. So protein contains what we call the amino acids, and those are the building blocks. So getting good protein, and what we're targeting for our protein is about 30 grams. Because what I'm trying to do with you all is help you build muscle. The more muscle you have, you probably heard me say this, the more your metabolism is going to work efficiently. So it's the best predictor of your metabolism. We want to change that body composition to more muscle, less fat. So getting good protein, and we want lean proteins that are going to taste good too. So I got a couple examples. Jeff and I have eggs for breakfast every morning. We get free-range eggs, and if you know a farmer who has fresh chickens, make friends with them and go get them from there, because otherwise it adds up a little bit. But good free range organic eggs, so you don't want the chickens that have been in the coops and are eating each other's, stuff. And then we usually grill up a bunch of chicken breasts throughout the week, so we have something to eat on. You can tell that we're getting down towards the end of the week because we don't have much left. Other great sources of protein is your meats that are red meats. And so I think that we've gotten, and I'll talk a little bit more about this when we come to fat, but we've gotten to think that red meats are bad, but it's usually, you have to consider what your animal source is eating. And so that's the number one thing, is to think about that circle of life. Just like our grains, are they organic or are they genetically modified? Think about that from your animal sources too. So if you're getting a grass-fed, pasture-raised meat, then you're not going to have nearly as much fat to worry about, and it's not going to be as inflammatory because it's not eating all those omega-6s, which are inflammatory markers. So we get, and I should have got out a piece of meat, but we just got a half a side of beef from Parker Farms. So we have different CSAs throughout the Kansas City area, and Parker Farms is a great one. They're really great to work with, and they're very friendly. They also do drop-offs, and we originally had done like a monthly drop-off where they give us not just the meat as far as the beef, but we got like a whole chicken and some pork, and their pork is delicious too. But instead we just got a whole side of beef now. I don't know why. Jeff's in charge of our meat man. So that is a good source of protein. Also are, your beans. We can have plant sources and animal sources of protein. So beans, some other things you might be surprised. Spinach actually has some protein in it. Your rice is actually going to have a decent amount of protein. Even in our oatmeal, it's got some protein in it. And of course your dairy products are going to have some protein in there too. Some people drink protein shakes, which is good. Just have to watch what the sugar grams are in your protein shakes. And I will tell you that some people have had a lot of digestive issues when it comes to whey protein. And I am one of those people. So I've actually switched to a pea protein and cranberry protein as well. And just have to watch the sugar on some of those. All right, our last macronutrient to talk about is my favorite. It's called fat. So I gave you an extra little handout about fat where we talked about the unhealthy fats and the healthy fats. And this is where I wanted to talk a little bit more about the saturated fats. So saturated fats have gotten a really bad rap from the ADA and from some of those nutrition. Hey, Braden's getting home from school. Everybody say hi to Braden. He's coming in the door with some of the protein powder that we just got. So anyway, saturated fats kind of gotten a bad rap, and I think it's in dispute right now. So this is an area, if I was out in the corporate world, I would still have to kind of veer to the left and say that no, saturated fat is still bad. But now that I can do my own thing, I'm going to tell you, think about the source of where your meat fats come from. So saturated fat is anything that sits up at room temperature. So think of bacon grease, or when you cook anything that, like hamburger, it's got that grease in it. So that would be a saturated fat. And on the other side is what are called the unsaturated fats. So we have the poly and the mono unsaturated fats. And those do not set up at room temperature. They have a lower point, and the way that they're molecularly structured, there's not a hydrogen ion attached to each one of them, and so they're more liquid. And then there's one final kind of fat that's the bad kind of fat, and it's called trans fat. And it used to be liquid at room temperature, but they wanted to set up, and so they made it so packaged products would have a longer shelf life. So that's the trans fat. It's molecularly dangerous, and they've been able to show that it has a lot of inflammation. So they have made, the FDA made a ruling that they needed to cut out all trans fats by, I think it was 2014. But you will still see it in food. So if it says partly hydrogenated anything in your label, so read the food label, that means it still has a trans fat in it. And how do they get away with that? Because there's less than 0.5 grams per serving. And if they can get away with just half a gram per serving, and call their serving whatever they need it to be, then they can still utilize it. So the only way that you can find that, again, is looking at the food label and reading if it says partly hydrogenated. Okay, so anything that says partly hydrogenated is a trans fat. You're going to still find it in candy bars. I had like a Jell-O cream cheese cheesecake thing at the studio as a box as an example, and they still have it in that. So just ideas there for you to look at. Some cookies, other packaged products, you're still going to see it. I don't know how my blueberries got over here. These go on the fruit side. Okay, so talking more about our good healthy fats now. Let's move into our monounsaturated fats. So monounsaturated fats are what they talk about in the Mediterranean diet. So Mediterranean diet has been researched extensively to see how do these people keep their heart disease down, and also people following the Mediterranean diet also, and this is just a diet that's high in things like avocados, olive oil, olives, almonds, things like that, and that's monounsaturated fat. Also, the depression rates went way down, so we know it's really important for our hormone function to get healthy fat. And so my last glass, I had everybody repeat, fat is not bad. Fat is not bad. It got a bad rap back in the 70s, and so they switched everything to being very high sugar, high carb. But fat is not bad. We really need it to help synthesize our hormones. And you need fat to lose fat. Need fat to lose fat. So good fat is what we want to focus on. Monounsaturated would be a good fat. So like I said, olive oil. This is coconut oil, and I know you all have heard a lot more of a rage about coconut oil. Coconut oil is actually a saturated fat, but it's a short chain saturated fat, and really that just means that in its molecular structure it's shorter, and although it's saturated. So it's good for using in some cooking. I use it in my baking. And again, it really helps your body as well with some of that inflammation, so decreases inflammation. So other things like sunflower seeds, chia seeds, these are going to be your polyunsaturated fats. Pumpkin seeds, where are my pumpkin seeds go? Polyunsaturated fats. Salmon, those types of things. So polyunsaturated are your omega-3s. And those, again, are anti-inflammatory as well. And we talked about this the other day, that inflammation is really one of the big things in the body, so we want to try to decrease inflammation. So getting these healthy fats in is going to help with that. Another good source is almond butter. This is one of my favorite things in the world. You take some almond butter, add an apple. This is a great snack. Yeah, yummy, yummy, yummy. Let's see, what else do we have? I think I hit, these are two of my favorite condiments. One of them is pesto, and this is just made out of olive oil. So you can just ground up some basil leaves, put some olive oil in there. This only has 2 grams of carb, and it has 1 gram of protein, and then it's got 9 grams of fat. So I'll put pesto sauce on sandwiches. I'll shake it up in my Italian dressing. I'll pretty much eat it on anything. So yummy pesto sauce. If you like basil, here's the way to go. Basil and garlic, if you ask me, make everything good. One of our other kitchen secrets here at the Bash House is Frank's Red Hot. So there's nothing in here but vinegar and cayenne pepper. There's no fat. There's pretty much nothing in here. 0 calories, 0 fat, 0 carb, 0 protein. But it has just got a yummy little kick to it. So I made some chicken soup the other day because of my allergies, and we put a few dashes of that in there. It was delicious. We make a buffalo chicken meatloaf that Jamie gave us a recipe for. We ground up a little turkey or sausage and some hamburger with some almond flour, some eggs, and you put some of this buffalo sauce on it. It is delish. So good to go. Great stuff there. And then also, we're not afraid to use butter at our house. So using butter. Somebody else is at the door. You see how my house is. Okay, so those are the big things that I wanted you all to learn today. Everybody repeat again. Fat isn't bad. Yes, fat is good. So trying to get, I didn't go over the breakdowns of the protein and fat. So let's look at that. So protein, we said let's shoot for about 30 grams or 30% of your diet. So we look at 30% of that 1,500 calories. So remember, we're focusing on 1,500 as an average of our calories. And that should be good for just about everybody, 15, 17. So 30% is going to be 450 calories. And again, protein has the exact same calories per gram. So there's 4 calories per gram of protein. And so we divide that 450 times 4 and we get, or divide it by 4, not divide it times, we just divide it by 4 and we get 112 grams. So we want 112 grams total of protein a day. And then if you divide that by, come over here and say hi, guys. This is Braden and JoJo. JoJo is my adopted son and Braden's my real son. Which one looks more like me?
Definitely me.
All right, bye guys. You gonna study? Do your homework?
Yeah.
Yay. And then if we divide that out times around 5 meals a day, then we're going to get 22 grams at each feeding. And so a chicken breast, about the size of this chicken breast, the size of the palm of your hand, is going to get you about 22 grams of protein. You can see how thick that is. 22 grams of protein. All right, and now let's look at fat. So we also said 30% of that, so obviously that makes it 450 as well. But fat has more calories per gram, and this is why it got a bad rap. So fat is going to be 9 calories per gram. So we divide that by 9 and we get a total of 50 grams of protein a day. So a total of 50 grams divided by 5, of course, is going to be 10 grams at each feeding as well. So let's look at this. So I'm going to have some almond butter as my fat. And 2 tablespoons of almond butter is going to give me 17 grams of fat. So if I use that as my stack, maybe I just want to use 1 tablespoon to stick around that 10 gram range. Or if I'm not going to have any later, then that's fine. You know, if I'm going to not have 5 meals a day and just stick to 3, then 2 tablespoons is good. When you're thinking about salad dressing on your salad, a tablespoon of olive oil is going to give you 14 grams of fat. So that's in the ballpark there. Most of the time you're not going to eat a whole tablespoon though, because if you mix the olive oil and vinegar, you know, a tablespoon is really quite a decent amount. But if you're having a big salad, that would be good. All right, girls, I think that's probably enough of me talking today. I know you're ready to get to your workout, so I'm just going to sign off and tell you goodbye, and I hope that you all have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy your workout today, and I will look forward to seeing you on Monday. Thanks so much. Love you all. Bye-bye.